So it becomes counterproductive when men become busybody and use that to impose their so-called right to demand. Because when they start demanding, they will not be able to fulfill their part of the Prophet's advice, which is to serve the wife. Because in order for you to serve the wife must be enticed. And the minute you demand, that is the minute you will kill the desire.
And you will irritate her at the very minimum.
So it cancels
each other. Yes. Although I can understand for the hadith for the wife, it's really a reminder for a woman to be sensitive to men's sexual needs and desire, because the way men has been created by Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala is that they are easily turned on, they are easily
to use patriarchy is actually a sign of weakness of the men. When you are being patriarchal, you're actually using your external powers to overpower your woman. When you do that, actually you are weak, because if you are strong, you don't need to use all this. Welcome to our podcast. Number 2. What's the deal with
conjugal rights?
Conjugal rights.
Yes.
What's the deal with conjugal rights?
Right. So we want to share some of the background info about chapter 2 lah. So I'm just staying on here, and this is Badr Osman, and we are the writers of the book Sex, Soul and Islam. Badr Osman is the main writer. I provide most of the clinical input. What was the thinking behind how you organize chapter 2?
In chapter 1, we have discussed on the Quranic ideal of the sexual phenomena, tranquility, love and mercy. So what we wanted to do in chapter 2 is investigate whether this has been achieved in reality in Muslim societies. That is the overall objective of chapter 2.
Right. Yeah. So I remember that we had discussed this prior to the writing of the book. And one of the issue I had given feedback is that a lot of husband, and there's a strong narrative that the woman role is to serve the husband's sexual need.
And this is what you see in counseling.
Yes, this is what I see happening. And women take it that this is an Islamic point of view, that they felt they need to obey and they need to serve, even though they are not happy, even though they are tired, even though they are sick.
So the male-serving interpretation of conjugal right is not only among men.
Right.
It's also among the women.
It has been adopted by the woman. And it is based, I think, from their understanding of the what we call the angel cursing hadith. So I'm sure most of you had heard of this hadith, that if a husband invite the wife to bed and she refuses, then she will be cursed by the angel until the morning.
But along the way, as we were researching this, we found out there are
2 more hadiths. So there's one hadith that say that if the husband called the wife, even if she's on a camel, she has to submit, and then even she's busy baking
in the oven.
Working on the oven, she still has to submit. So I think this all these hadiths we have quoted in our book, because we felt that it's not something that we want to sweep under the carpet. We do need to upfront address and make sense of them.
There's something which we have been wanting to address, not only in writing the book, but actually in our experience, in our teaching experience, as well as in your counseling experience. And the book gives us the opportunity to investigate why the community by and large has adopted that interpretation of sex
being male serving,
the male serving.
So what have you found out for husband?
This is what we discover as we research this topic, that Muslims, not only in the area of sex, but also in many other areas like leadership, for example, we tend to misappropriate hadith. We tend to use hadith which are advantageous to us. That's okay, but we forget about those which are incriminating to us. And I think when it comes to the male-serving interpretation of conjugal rights, this is what happened. So we noticed that other than the hadith which we quoted earlier, which this is what we categorize as the wife-directed hadith, there are hadith which we categorize as the husband-directed hadith. These are hadith which the Prophet spoke to husbands. And when it comes to this kind of hadith, the Prophet was quite instructive on husbands,
right,
to to be serving the wife actually. Talk about the male serving hadith. There are actually many hadiths that tell husbands to serve the wife.
Right. So maybe I quote this is from page 62 of our book. When any of you has sex with his wife, be earnest. When your desire is fulfilled before hers, do not stop until her desire is fulfilled. This is hadith by Abu Yala. Another one is, in three matters, the weakness of a male is expressed. Thirdly, the man who approaches his wife and thereby fulfills his sexual desire from her before she fulfills hers from him. This from Dalami.
Yeah, so this kind of hadith, if you were not to give excuses, you will see that the Prophet instructed men to serve wife actually. It seems like a contradiction because on the one hand, it appears that husband can demand sex anytime, but in this hadith, it appears that the husband must serve wives all the time.
Yeah,
but the minute you demand, that is the minute you will kill the desire,
and you will irritate her at the very minimum.
So they will not be able to fulfill their part of the Prophet's advice, which is to serve the wife. Because in order for you to serve the wife must be enticed. So whenever we have a contradiction, we know that the Prophet is not a contradictory person. He's not a scatterbrain. So because of that, we have to look back and see what's happening actually. And when we think about it, we conclude that actually this is about the Prophet talking to two different groups of people. And that these two groups of people must be concerned about what the Prophet is teaching them, rather than being busybody about the other party. Like, so in other words, if you were to take this, we were to balance these two groups of hadith, it means that wives should be concerned with what the Prophet were telling them. That the Prophet were reminding them of the sexual readiness of men, that it is quite unkind for women to be
dismissive,
belittle, neglecting.
Yeah, which happened during the time of Prophet.
Which happened during the time of Prophet, and I'm sure,
You want to share about the hadith about the woman who kind of bluff that they have been pregnant? I thought it was interesting. We have this thing even during the time of the Prophet.
So it is it throws us inside. These are weaker hadiths. It's not in Sahih Bukhari or Muslim. So we don't use it to be the basis of our argument, but it's to give an idea of why the Prophet possibly have to make such statements. It's because there were women known during the time of the Prophet to give excuses. Like there's a group of women the Prophet called the Mughalisa, the women who like to bluff their husband that they are in menstruation. The other group of people the Prophet called the Maswifa, women who like to postpone
but never fulfill.
Never fulfill. Right. So it is known. It is known in the community because it's happening today.
Yes, very often.
So it is. This is the kind of shenanigans that the Prophet have heard of. So he had to give a strong reminder to women.
Yeah.
So that's why he made those kind of hadith. And so we found out that those hadiths are sahih.
Yes.
It's not to be debated. It is true. The Prophet actually said those things. But it is more to remind women. So it becomes counterproductive when men become busybody and use that to impose their so-called right to demand. Because when they start demanding, they will not be able to fulfill their part of the Prophet's advice, which is to serve the wife. Because in order for you to serve the wife must be enticed. And the minute you demand, that is the minute you will kill the desire.
And you will irritate her at the very minimum.
So it cancels
each other. Yeah, so I can understand that the hadith is used as a strong reminder for women to be mindful. And that if there are good reason, you have to refuse in a nice manner that doesn't make your husband angry. And I think what is a lost tradition is if you cannot provide sexual desire, fulfill your husband's sexual desires, there are actually ways to kind of soothe and pacify him, and that is also possible. It doesn't have to be always a genital stimulation. Genital.
So maybe as a little digression from the chapter itself,
right?
We can chip in that actually Muslims should go beyond. I mean, should be concerned about the fiqh. But after you have understood the fiqh, you should go beyond. Like for example, if wife, for example, find that they have difficulty in fulfilling the Prophet's command. Instead of just being unhappy about the fiqh, you should actually be looking at the akhlaq aspect of the relationship. And when you understand that it is actually a relationship issue, so you go to relationship gurus or relationship professionals, marital counselors, or the sex therapists, or even if you don't want to go to professionals, you find a relative who you feel wise. So when you look at it, when you go to somebody and together you discuss it from a relationship point of view, you may come up with you may get solution.
We are encouraging people to look at sexual relationship between the genital connection.
You mean beyond the genital connection?
Yeah. We need to look at that. And it is actually the social emotional connection as a couple, and it's based on a good foundation in the marriage that is based on tranquility, love, and mercy, and being a teamwork as a couple. When couples look at their relationship in terms of me being of wife say I want to be of service to my husband, and husband say I want to be of service to you, I want to carry out my responsibility, then you create a good balance for each other, rather to say this is my right. And if each one is fighting for their right, actually both of them won't get anything. But if we see it as a responsibility and act of service to each other.
So in this section of the chapter, what we want to tell couples is at the fiqh level, remember we say you have to go beyond fiqh. But even before you go beyond fiqh, at the fiqh level, you have to be comprehensive in your understanding. You cannot take that part only which is advantageous to you, and then forget about the other part which is advantageous to your partner. If both parties are conscious of their part of the bargain, then they are ready to look at what the Prophet had to say about what they should be doing when they are together. Just a little digression. So when we start to give such messages, we have been getting messages from male chauvinistic Muslim men, and they are accusing us of encouraging women to be disrespectful of their husband. If we advocate for husbands to be kind and to be serving to women, that doesn't mean we are encouraging women to be disrespectful of husband. That is fallacious conclusion. You have to look at both our message. Our message is husband must be kind. Wife must also be kind to husband's natural tendencies. People need to be told, actually. Not necessarily you will understand, because you are not a man. You do not have a man's body. You do not have a man's organs. You do not have men's hormones. So maybe some women really have difficulty in understanding what's so difficult about controlling your desire. Just wait for night. I mean, why do you want me when I'm at the oven, when I'm at the camel? No, just wait for a while. You will still get what you want. But it is something which only men can understand.
So you want to enlighten the woman?
How else to enlighten the woman? I can only remind, and you need a man, a trustworthy man like the Prophet, to remind you that this is the challenge that men face.
So I'm saying, what I'm hearing is that women need to understand that husband can be easily turned on sexually. I think
there are many paths.
They can be by looking, and actually, to be fair, we also must understand that the temptation for men are more than women, because you see, I mean, living in Singapore, and we are a cosmopolitan society. When they go out, they are exposed to ladies who wearing miniskirt, wearing spaghetti straps. So the temptation is more, and it's really they really need a lot of discipline to control themselves. And alhamdulillah, I think generally our husband folk here has been careful and mindful.
If you notice that your husband is a decent husband, his eyes are not moving around, he is faithful to you, and he's decent, so on and so forth, don't think it's because he doesn't have desire for other women. That is scientifically not true. Man has been created with the capacity to have multiple attraction to women at the animalistic level. No man is created an angel. He has been created like an animal. When he is decent, he has to fight for it every day. And that is the reason why the Prophet is very strong about you being sensitive to his needs because of the sacrifices that he's making for the sake of keeping your relationship
Chaste.
Yeah.
So that's why there's also another hadith say that you see some woman who allows you then go back to your wife as a way to channel your need. Yeah. So basically, it's to appeal to the woman to understand that husband's sexual need easily stimulated, and that it's really a real challenge for them. Women generally are not very turned on. Even they say a hung or running
Physically, visually
they are not.
Yeah.
Although I would think right now that may change a bit because of the effect of pornography. We used to think that pornography is only being watched by men, but we understand now that both men and women can be equally attracted to pornography.
So this is the message that we give to women, and our message is clear. The problem that we are having with our community is there are some men, when we tell them to be kind, to be serving two wives, then they make the wrong conclusion that we are actually more liberal feminist leaning.
I would say you are although I would understand that we are giving a new perspective to many Muslim society that are entrenched on patriarchy. So systemically, there is one big chunk of the social cultural norms and value of that community that really have to be unpacked and have to be reviewed slowly. Sex is only one component. The other things about the roles of husband and wife, the position of women in Islam, whether we are equal or what our responsibility. That is something that needs to be unpacked. So it's really big thing.
So it was a proper patriarchal, where you have to look at the definition of patriarchy, because patriarchy is not just about fighting for the right of men, but it is about fighting for the right of men at the expense of others. And the Prophet was not like that. So you can't say the Prophet was patriarchal. And I know there will be men who would accuse me as betraying manhood, manliness,
and being feminist.
And being a feminist. Yeah. Actually, to use patriarchy is actually a sign of weakness of the men. Because if you are, the Prophet has said, the strong man is not the one that can defeat others in wrestling. That's what the Prophet said. It's not about physical power, but power is about the ability to control your desire. The example he gave was to control your anger. Yeah. So it is about the ability to control your desire, to control your feelings, and to fight for what is fair, what is just. When you are being patriarchal, you're actually using your external powers. You're using your economic power, your political power, you're using your physical power to overpower your woman. When you do that, actually you are weak. Because if you are strong, you don't need to use all this. All these are supposed to be used to serve your wife and your family and your children and your society. Does it make sense?
This should be a good chapter for another book.
We will go into a different podcast on what it means to be a leader in the family.
Okay. So the hadith for husband reminded them of their responsibility to fulfill their wife's sexual need. And if you understand women, they will not be turned on, or they will not be into the mood for sexual relationship if you demand them, or you force more if you force them. In my counseling experiences, most wives can provide to the husband's sexual need, but actually are not involved. They became very disengaged, or just give in to the husband without the emotional intimacy that was needed. So I do have husband who say that, I do get my sexual gratification, but not my sexual satisfaction. Meaning I can ejaculate, I do have pleasure, but I felt there wasn't an intense connection with my wife. And I think like one of my clients say, I get it, but I don't get it. It sounds like a riddle, but that is the reality. What I felt is needed is for a husband to understand that woman's sexual desire requires her to actually to be happy with you, to be pleased with you, then she can attend holistically. And if you look at the hadith, if the man is supposed to pleasure the woman up to the point that she has orgasm, and for that to happen, she must be happy and looking forward to the sexual relationship. That cannot happen when the husband enforce and demand without considering what is happening to her. So I think this holistic understanding of what does the hadith for the husband man is lost. Although I can understand for the hadith for the wife, it's really a reminder for a woman to be sensitive to men's sexual needs and desire, because the way men has been created by Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala is that they are easily turned on, they are easily aroused by their wife, and may want to fulfill their sexual need. But as a wife, actually will take a lot of effort to turn her on. Yeah, I think that was more of the reminder, which then lead to the third set of hadith. Third group of hadith, the Prophet's advice on lovemaking. This is page 123. It's about having fun with sex. Okay. Oh Jabir, have you just got married? Jabir say yes. And then Prophet say, a virgin or a matron? And I replied, a matron. He said, why not a virgin, so that you might play with her and she with you, and you might amuse her and she amuses you. I said, Abdullah, my father, died and left girls, and I decided marrying a girl like them. So I married a lady, matron, so that she may look after them. And on that, the Prophet said, may Allah bless you.
So this is a very long hadith. Firstly, point of clarification. The Prophet is not saying that matrons or old women cannot have fun in sex. But here in the hadith, he's referring to a young man. Prophet was more talking about the difference in age. So it's very unlikely for people with age gap to be able to connect at the humorous level. So the main thing when it comes to relationship among couples is the last part of the hadith. Between husband and wife, you should have fun. So when the Prophet was talking to husband, he talked about husband responsibility. To wives, he talked about wife's responsibility. But when he's talking to couples, responsibility is not in the picture anymore. It is about having fun. And the word fun is an English word that we use to replace a particular Arabic word which he used. He used the word la'aba. Tula'abuka wa tula'abuha. The root word is the word play, but the form of the inflection of the word play give the connotation of mutuality, meaning you play her and she play you. So in English that sounds a bit funny. So the idea is actually to have fun. That's what you do when you are playing with each other. Yeah.
Yeah. So have fun and amuse each other, basically. Yeah. So this set of hadith reminded couple that we are to engage our sexual relationship with words of love, with kissing, and other form of sensuality through physical touch.
Basically at the emotional.
At the emotional level. Yes, and at the communication level. Yeah. So if a husband kind of force and demand sex, I don't think wife will be communicative with him.
Okay. So how exactly this can be done is actually in the fourth chapter of our book, and we will go further into detail. Maybe we sum up this discussion with the understanding of the concept of conjugal rights.
Yes.
We call on readers to reconsider, re-understand, reframe our understanding of conjugal rights, because conjugal right or sexual rights, in fact, there are many sexual activists who want women to fight for their right. At the legal level, that is correct actually, but that should be seen as the basic. The way towards bliss and harmony in sexual relationship is not through demanding your rights, because this is a matter of the heart. You end up being lawyers in the bedroom, and you're not going to be happy with each other. So we have to look at what does conjugal right actually mean. So one way to look at conjugal right is entitlement. So is entitlement the only way to look at rights? You can look at it as an entitlement, or you can look at it as a privilege given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But whether you should have sex or not on that particular night still depends on your mutual attraction. So with that sense of right, you don't assume, you don't have a sense of entitlement, you don't assume, and you definitely do not demand that the other party must give you sex. So instead, what you need to do is firstly to be attractive, and then even to seduce, to woo. But all these are the things which will make the process towards sex more beautiful than the idea of entitlement and demand.
So basically what we're saying is that the art of lovemaking requires a fair amount of being attractive, being fun, and actually basically being kind and seducing each other. That is the one that will uphold the sexual relationship rather than see that it's my right, you must give in to me. Right.
So you only go into arts only when you understand that it is not an entitlement.
Yeah.
It is only a permission given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you have to work on attraction actually. And that's where art come into play. Yeah. So when you relook into the concept of conjugal right, you are not dismissing conjugal right. But you can look at it from the legal level, which is actually a basic level, or you can go beyond that. Because behind every law in Islam, there is a purpose underlying it. There is a means towards achieving it. And in this case, is what Inon was referring to as the art of lovemaking, and this is what we will discuss in podcast number 4.
Other than that, it's also to understand the fiqh not only from the legal, but from the akhlaq point of view, the relationship point of view, which is also a theme in our book.
This is the kind of advocacy that people like Imam Ghazali wants Muslim to have. What we are saying to go beyond Sharia is not our new idea. It has been done by people like Imam Ghazali, for example. When he wrote Ihya Ulumuddin, he found that people during his time are too legalistic about things. Everything is about fiqh. And he feel that because of that, the essence of Islam has been lost. And that is why he wrote the book Ihya Ulumuddin, where he bring in the inner dimensions of what you're doing in Salah, so on and so forth, and including sex. He talked about sex, and in fact, there's one saying from him.
Yes, which we quoted
in the opening of our book.
I think a lot of you may be surprised. This is from Imam Ghazali. The pleasure that is felt in sexual intercourse between a man and his wife is a little sign of the next worldly pleasure, by Imam Ghazali. And we mentioned it, I think, in our podcast one.
So I think that's about all our investigation in chapter 2 with regards to conjugal rights and also this meal serving interpretation.
So we want to talk about we talk about marital rape because I felt that was important. We understand this is a hot button issue. So we decided to address this topic because we felt it's much needed and based on my counseling experiences. And then in that case, we also make ourselves vulnerable to a lot of name calling. But here we go.
We start with the definition of rape. Rape is forceful entry into the vagina or any other opening, bodily opening, by force and without consent. I think these two things are important, by force and without consent. And so by that definition, actually immediately it makes it haram. Because of there's one hadith that say, do not harm and do not be harmed. So based on that alone, it makes it haram. When you use force, whether it is physical force or emotional force, it is actually harmful to your wife. And, it is actually rape. But the problem with Muslims understanding this is because of the definition of marriage. Generally, marriage means that you are given the license to have sex. So people misconstrue this as having the right to have sex anyhow, anytime, which is actually not true. It is subject to you fulfilling every aspect of Islamic guidance. And if the Prophet had said, do not harm and do not be harmed, it means that you cannot do it with harm.
I think that men underestimate the impact on women if they were forced to have sex without consent, even if a wife. The kind of not only physical pain she has, but the emotional trauma and the subsequent effect of how she feels and how she views the husband will really be changed. And that will affect future relationship. If she felt that, I'm just being subjected and I'm being abused, I'm in a toxic relationship, it will really cause a marriage to spiral down. In some cases, women will just tolerate this because they're dependent on the husband. And in cases where she has some empowerment and support, she will leave the marriage because this is just abuse on the woman.
So we just bring in some of the popular arguments, like some men will argue the angel cursing hadith means that you can force. But you cannot use this hadith because the Prophet was talking about angels cursing the wife. And angels have the capacity to see whether the wife was being reasonable or not reasonable. So let the angels curse. That hadith did not give license to men to even curse the wife, let alone to use force. So that hadith cannot be used to justify marital rape.
I feel that in the issue of marital rape is men who just want to use their authority and control over women. They are lazy. They can't be bothered to actually be a beautiful husband, to be a kind husband, to be the kind of husband that wife want to submit. You know, it's just a shortcut way. I know a lot of men will be unhappy with us saying this, but I think that is
actually the truth.
The painful reality that guys have to see.
Another way to understand it conceptually, this is about marital contract. Marriage is a contract that legalizes sex. Contract means that you agree to certain things. It's like, give you a simple example, it's like the phone contract. The contract is that you give the telco certain amount of money and the telco must give you phone service. If the telco failed to give you phone service, that doesn't mean you can go and beat him up.
Burn down the office.
Burn down the office. Yeah. It is governed by a process of law. So the same thing with marriage actually. It is a contract. If the wife refuses to have sex on that night, it means that she has withdrawn her consent. So if she has withdrawn the consent and you use force, that is the definition of rape, even if it is in marriage. Now, whether the wife has the right to withdraw consent or not, it's not for you to judge. That is the meaning of contract. It is actually for two parties to judge. In this world, it is for your qadi in the Sharia court on earth. And it is for Allah SWT to judge in the day of judgment. Only these two parties. And the qadi also is because he has been given the mandate by society and permission by Allah SWT. Husband has never been given the right to judge. That's why if these things happen, the aggrieved party, meaning the husband, must go to authority. If you have a Sharia court, you go to a Sharia court. Otherwise, qadi or village elder or whatever you have in your country. To mediate and to find who is at fault. And at the most extreme, it's actually divorce.
And then if you look at Islam as a religion of peace, or at the gentleness of the Prophet, people forget about that. They forget this sunnah of not using force on women, which will lead to our next topic about wife beating. Okay.
So wife beating. Wife beating, we discuss wife beating also in the book. It is because of this verse. The verse is from Surah an-Nisa ayat number 34.
But those wives from whom you feel arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them.
If a verse remains in the Quran, it doesn't mean that it is a law in Islam. So another example is the prohibition on drinking intoxicant. Do you know that there is one verse in the Quran that say, do not be drunk when you want to pray? It doesn't mean that you can be drunk. The prohibition of intoxicants in Islam is very clear. And so the verse also remains in the Quran. So if a verse remains in the Quran, it doesn't mean that it is a law in Islam. So you have to look at it in totality. And when it comes to wife beating, that verse is retained to show the process that the Prophet took to gradually change a value which is so entrenched in Jahiliyyah Arabia. The Prophet's first advocacy was actually to be kind to women. But this is 7th century Arabia. And not only in Arabia, in many other parts of the world. Being kind to women are actually not a popular idea. In Persia, in Europe, in Asia, women are treated almost like animals. So it is a revolutionary idea actually that the Prophet, and of course in Jahiliyyah Arabia, women were treated, women were even inherited. So when the Prophet started to advocate being kind to women, there was a little civil turmoil actually.
Resistance.
Men were not happy. So because of that, the verse came in. This verse is stopgap measure to pacify the men, because if they reject this idea, they will continue beating women. But instead, the verse tell them you can beat the woman. At the same time, this beating is no more than beating with the miswak, the toothbrush.
So I thought it was significant that he specifically mentioned toothbrush.
Yeah.
Because if you have let it open, beat her, then it will be subject to more interpretation.
With a lock.
We will lock with whatever you can find the house. So I thought it was very interesting that he used a specific object.
It helps to pacify the man and at the same time protect the woman. But while this is happening, the Prophet continued with his advocacy to be kind to women. So the idea is actually, at the end of the day, because of his advocacy to be kind, Muslims in the end will actually take the new value that the Prophet wanted to have. In the meantime, the verse is still written in the Quran. It's not because that is the objective in Islam, but it is part and parcel of the explanation on the gradual process that the Prophet had to take with regards to this very touchy issue. But if you were to look at it, even at that level, to reprimand a wife with a miswak, it's not going to help. How is it going to help those who believe in wife beating? Doesn't help, and it also doesn't help those who are against it, because if you beat, whether you beat with a miswak or you beat with a lock, beating is beating. It is still demeaning. So the better way for Muslims who have the advantage of history is to look at the spirit behind this. The Prophet wanted us to be kind to our wives. And you also have a lot of other hadith where the Prophet mentioned that we must be kind to our wives.
Yeah. A hadith by Abu Dawud, do not beat Allah's handmaiden. And then Bahaki, Muawiyah al-Qashari narrated, I went to the apostle of Allah, peace be upon him, asked, what do you say, command about our wives? And he replied, give them food of what you have for yourself, and clothe them by which you clothe yourself, and do not beat them, and do not revile them. This is by Bahaki. And lastly, from Tirmizi, the best of you are those who are the best to their woman.
Yeah. So in this hadith, it's very clear the Prophet's standard is that husbands are not to beat them, and not to use, not even to revile, and not to be unkind, basically to.
I thought what will also be is significant to know is that the first step is to advise the wife. Meaning to have a series of conversation, discussion to find out what is the issue, for men to show their leadership in trying to understand, to advise, to motivate, to understand what is happening, and then how you can actually work as a team to support her, to be a team in managing the family.
Yeah,
it's not straight to beat.
Yeah. So you reminded me of this this thing about leadership in Islam lah.
Right.
So many leaders, even political leaders, and so husbands also like to quote this verse in the Quran: obey Allah, obey the Prophet, and obey those people in authority. So husbands like to use this hadith. The wife must follow me because Allah say you must obey. I'm authority. Allah has given me the authority. Again, this is another case of misappropriation. This is addressing followers. Followers must be obedient to Allah and the Prophet and the people in power. Followers must do this. What did Allah say to leaders? The kind of verses like, call towards the way of your Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching. And then there's another verse that say, make decisions by consultation with them. So these are the kind of verses that leaders and husbands should be looking at, instead of the other kind of verses which followers should be looking at. So if both parties look at their part of the bargain, there will be harmony in families and even in nations, actually. So basically, that is the content of chapter 2, that is to reinstall fairness in your sense of duty and responsibility. But that is not the end. That is actually a starting point.
Right.
Because after that, then you are ready to receive the Prophet's advice with regards to your relationship, with regards to lovemaking. In the 4th chapter of our book, and we will go further into detail. But in the meantime, maybe we leave you with the hadith which the Prophet used to help us, to help husband and wife, to relate at that emotional and sensual level.
So this is what we call the messenger hadith at page 116 of our book. Let none of you fall suddenly upon his wife like an element. Let there be a messenger between the two. And when someone asks what is the messenger of Prophet, he say, kissing and words of love. Hadith Badalani.
So we will elaborate more. Look out for our podcast number 4.
Looking at chapter 2, I wanted to ask him what was the thinking behind it that you organized it in such a way. What was the What was the thinking behind how chapter 2 is organized? So what was the thinking behind chapter 2?
Cannot say. I was thinking about something that you have.
Just say it was you, sudahlah. Oh my God, just say the word. Just say it's a simple word. Okay.
So in that book,
so that you have a
okay. So in that mode, So in that book, there are many. You were giggling with them.
Me, that's the baby. You want to finish my coffee first? There's a bit of coffee there. Okay. Alright. Okay, start with Assalamualaikum. Then we go. I have things I thought we can discuss, Go. So what I'm hearing in the long-winded session by my husband